My name is Clayton Brasher, and this is my speech number 3, informative speech, and this is my audience. It may be hard to fathom, but several of the political aspects of today in the country and the world can be traced back to nearly 30 years ago. And many of the effects of these aspects can be traced back to one man, Ronald Reagan. Serving as the 40th President of the United States, Ronald Reagan led our country through the tense final years of the Cold War and turned the economy of the 1980s into some of the best the country's ever seen. Although he did not lead the typical be the future president life in his early years, Ronald Reagan's story is nothing short of amazing. With that being said, let's take a look at this great man's life from the very beginning. Ronald Wilson Reagan, born February 6, 1911, led a life of humble beginnings, living above a local store in rural Illinois and working as a lifeguard at his local neighborhood pool. During high school is where Reagan grew fond of acting, sports, and storytelling, which would later attribute to his phenomenal public speaking skills. Later in college, at Eureka College, his classmates elected him to student body president, where he successfully led a revolt against the college's president in order to keep the positions of several faculty staff members. This was seen by many as the first step in a lifelong pursuit of strong leadership from Reagan. After college, Reagan moved to Iowa and began picking up several local odd jobs as a radio sports announcer, eventually landing a job as a radio announcer for play-by-plays for the Chicago Cubs in Iowa. In 1930, he took a screen test that would allow him to go on and make several films in the 1930s, eventually making him one of the most popular young actors in that time. However, his Hollywood career was short-lived because in 1942, he was called into military service to fight. But due to his poor eyesight, he never saw action across seas. But fitting though, that much of Reagan's military service involved starring in military training videos, which would further continue his entertainment career. After his mildly successful entertainment career, Reagan took a turn to join the political community. Though initially starting as a liberal Democrat, much of Reagan's speeches involved or stood around a conservative platform focusing on limited national government and pro-business aspects. Eventually, Reagan would register as a Republican and gain national attention after famously giving his Time for Choosing speech for Republican presidential candidate Barry Goldwater. California Republicans were very impressed by his charisma in his speech and his political views that Reagan eventually announced his campaign for governor of California in 1966. Reagan's 2 terms as governor served as the building blocks for the platform he would run for president in the years to come, which was sending the welfare bums back to work. After a failed presidential campaign in 1976, Ronald Reagan beat Democratic incumbent Jimmy Carter in the 1980 presidential election to become the 40th president of the United States. Through surviving an assassination attempt in 1981, cutting taxes, ending the Cold War, and implementing Reaganomics, Reagan grew as one of the most successful and most liked presidents in the modern era. Perhaps a critical move in Reagan's presidency came in Germany at the Brandenburg Gate in 1987, where Reagan challenged then Soviet Union leader Mikhail Gorbachev to tear down this wall in reference to the Berlin Wall. Just a few short months after his term would end, Reagan, along with the rest of the world, watched the Soviet Union and the Berlin Wall fall as many in Europe saw freedom and peace in their time. After a peaceful and quiet post-presidency life with his wife Nancy, Ronald Wilson Reagan passed away on June 5, 2004 due to pneumonia and complications of his Alzheimer's disease. With over 100,000 people viewing his coffin lay in state, it should go without saying that this great man's legacy will live on forever. In summary, Ronald Reagan was raised in humble upbringings, however, lived an extraordinary life full of successes in politics and entertainment. Given all that you said, it should be simple to see that Reagan's life and legacy still rings on today in his domestic and international affairs. It is easy to see that Ronald Reagan will remain forever a staple in American politics and a symbol of the American dream. Thank you. Now I have a time for question and answers. If anyone has a question they would like to ask, I'd be happy to answer. Yes.
You talk a lot about all the good things that Reagan's done and all his triumphs, but is there anything bad in his career?
Yeah, actually, although he didn't have too many controversies in his time, Reagan did have one major controversy that still some people think about today in his time, but it was the Iran-Contra affair, which was seen as Reagan and several of his senior administrators giving arms to Iranians in return for money that Reagan and the United States would give to Venezuelan Contra rebels, which those are bad people, and to the American people it wasn't too good that we were giving money to people who were going out killing others. But to this day, Reagan has still remained that he has been not guilty and found not guilty for that. Anyone else? Yes.
When there were 39 presidents before Ronald Reagan, how did you finally decide Ronald Reagan to do your speech on?
Well, growing up, I'd always been fond of Reagan and his all of his international and domestic affairs and everything. And just for prior research, I've always enjoyed the work he's done and the abstract life he lived growing up through his time in the entertainment business, because it's not typical of seeing a president go from entertainment to politics. And I think that's really interesting. And also, aside from that, I just always enjoyed his reading up on his strong-handed international policies and our like-minded domestic affairs. Any other questions? Thank you very much.